I think our age group grew up yelling at each other on Call of Duty over Xbox Live and saying a lot worse things than what we say publicly on Twitter. So you just can't really take anything seriously as well when you're doing it. And if you do, like, the internet's not going to be a fun place.
I want to give a huge thanks to our sponsor, Gelt. Gelt specializes in providing comprehensive tax solutions tailored for businesses and their owners. They'll help you and your business manage and optimize your taxes so you can pay the least amount of taxes legally possible. I'm a Gelt customer myself. I've saved a ton of money on my taxes working with them. I'm a huge fan of what they're doing. If you want to check it out, go to joingelt.com/nextplay and let them know we sent you. They'll give you 15% off your first year.
Welcome to the nextplay podcast. I'm Ben. I spent the past 5 years working at Notion, and now I'm building nextplay, and I'm really excited to be bringing on great people here to talk about their career moves and what they've learned over the years. And today we have Alex. Hey, Alex.
Hey.
Alex Cohen is founder, investor, and shitposter, in that order. He was most recently the senior director of product at Carbon Health, and before Carbon, he started a couple companies, and most recently in April, he started another company. Super excited to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm excited. I hope to get like a Notion 101 while we're on this podcast. So. Oh
yeah, we can do that for sure. So when people ask you, how do you say what you do for a living?
It's complicated is definitely the short of it. I've had real jobs for the last decade, but also Twitter became a thing in the last 4 years and started making money off Twitter, which was a lot of fun. I always joke that Twitter paid for our house because in theory, it definitely did.
Wow.
At one point I had brands like other tech companies reaching out saying, hey, can you run our Twitter? We'll just give you the keys. You can go and shit post and post memes and ghostwrite for us. And I was very reluctant at first. And then they were like, hey, we'll pay you a lot of money to do it. And I was like, you know what? There's a price for everything. And so ended up running probably half a dozen brands over the last few years. I don't anymore now that I'm full-time on my new startup and we raised money. It would be irresponsible for me to have multiple jobs, but Twitter definitely paid for our mortgage for the last 3 years. So I joke that just a product manager who happens to have a Twitter side gig.
That's incredible. I didn't realize that was the scale. You definitely are a prolific shitposter from what I've seen. So how do you decide what to tweet? What does that look like?
I really don't. I just tweet whatever comes to my mind, and then you'll frequently see me delete tweets that are not bangers. I don't delete them because I'm embarrassed or I'm backtracking my words. It didn't get a lot of traction, and so I delete it for optics mostly, but everything's on the fly. Like I'll think about something and then I'll tweet it out. There's no prepping, there's no planning, there's no I don't use any special tools. I just literally hop into my phone, send out whatever meme or tweet or post comes to my head and then see how it does.
I feel like Twitter should have a feature that just auto deletes the post after, I don't know, 3 minutes if it doesn't have the engagement. I do the same thing sometimes because I'm just like, maybe this isn't a great tweet and I just delete it.
Yeah. I wish they did have that feature because there's a few third-party tools that will delete your tweets for you, but the problem is sometimes they'll nuke your entire Twitter account and go haywire. And so I had a buddy who used it and paid for a premium tool of Tweet Delete or whatever it was, and it deleted every single one of his tweets. Not past a certain date, but his entire Twitter history was wiped clean. And it's almost like a lobotomy for your Twitter. I was thinking, I should go do that. Maybe that would be healthy. But then I don't want to lose the archives of every tweet that I've sent into existence. So
yeah, maybe you can back them up.
Archiving, I think, would be ideal.
Yeah, totally. So what do you tell someone who's trying to build their following on Twitter?
I think the biggest key is tweeting interesting content that's original. Your tweets recently are a good example where no one that's very original content. Putting together a whole life's guide in Notion on how to manage your finances and your dates and your goals and setting all that's unique, right? It's not this off the shelf, sort of unoriginal thing that you copy and pasted from someone. It took a lot of time and it was controversial because I think you had it was great, right? It was the perfect tweet for engagement because you had half the people saying, why would I ever organize my life this way and treat my life as a bunch of KPIs, and a whole bunch of people that were like, I need this, my life's a disaster, and I need to organize everything. And very few people in the middle that were whatever, and I find that those are the best tweets is they are controversial right down the middle, but they don't cancel you. That's usually a good line to not cross. And so when it comes to building an audience, I think you need original content that is entertaining, it's exciting. People like want to because everyone's attention spans are so short that you need to write something that really captures people in a way that's not regurgitative. And what I mean by that is you'll go find every other tech bro who's like, here's 13 things I learned from blah, blah, blah. Or like, I don't know. It's just the same template over and over and over and over again. That stuff worked for a little bit. Now it's just, you read it, you're like, whose course did you take to learn how to tweet like this? And so, but I would say like posting original content that's exciting, captures people's attention, and really like pushes people to both sides, whether they agree with it or don't agree with it. I find that gets the best engagement versus a generic tweet that's just kind of boring.
Got it. So be original, be controversial, be consistent, and don't get canceled.
Yeah. I think those are the rules. And I think a lot of people give up over, very quickly in their Twitter journeys. And I think a lot of it just comes down to reps and posting consistently. You won't really go viral your first tweet.
Right. Were you ever almost canceled through any of your tweets?
Oh yeah, multiple times. I've had people reach out to my old employer, try to get me fired. I've had some crazy DMs. I try to keep it. I try to stay away from politics and try to stay away from religion and things that are like ultra spicy. I mean, working in healthcare, you kind of have to avoid alienating a ton of people and like you just have to find that boundary there. But yeah, I've had, we used to have people who would reach out to Carbon all the time and be like, does this guy represent your brand? And internally we'd be like, like fuck off. Like who cares about that person? And so it was great because I knew I wasn't going to get fired over my tweets. I also didn't post stuff related to like healthcare, for example. And so I think that's a really important element to not getting canceled, but also like people forget within a few days, everything dies down. Everyone sort of has the attention span of a goldfish on the internet. And so I think like you just kind of have to let things go and not worry about it. All my notifications are muted. People could be ripping me apart on Twitter right now, and I would have no idea, which is kind of nice. Like ignorance is bliss to some extent, and then people forget in 3 days. They don't remember what you said. They don't remember how it made them feel. I mean, unless you like go really far extreme, which I'm sure you've seen posts that like really are bad. But for the most part, like. In a week from now, no one will remember the Notion tweet unless you keep doubling down on it over and over and over again, which is great. It's great content, very engaging. It's not going to cancel you. So as you should, but if you were to not double down on that, most likely people would forget in a week, 2 weeks from now. And that's just kind of the way the internet works. Yeah, totally. It's happened to me before and it can be unpleasant. I think unless you react in a in a fun way, which is what I tried to do. For example, when everyone started shitposting me about the Notion template, I was just like, oh, this is fun. I'm just gonna have a great time. Yeah. You can't take anything personally on the internet either. I think a lot of us dunked on the tweet, and it wasn't a dunk on you. It's just fun content. It's already going viral. You find a way to amplify it. If anything, it's good. Like I think it's true where bad press is good press on Twitter, and bad engagement still leads to more engagement. And so I think I don't take anything personally on Twitter. And I think for the most part, as you've got something going viral and you see people like ripping it apart or like joking about it, it's just, I don't know. It's the internet. We sort of grew up in these terrible Reddit forums. And I think our age group grew up yelling at each other on Call of Duty over Xbox Live and saying a lot worse things than what we say publicly on Twitter. So you just can't really take anything seriously as well when you're doing it. And if you do, like the internet's not going to be a fun place. Gotta have thick skin. Yeah, for sure. What do you think has been the greatest moment in your Twitter career so far? So I actually have it framed. A company sent this to me recently. They put my most viral tweet. It has 350,000 likes in a frame. And it's the tweet. I was laid off from Twitter this afternoon. I was in charge of managing badge access to Twitter's offices. Elon just called me and asked if I can come back to help them regain access to HQ as they shut off all badges and accidentally locked themselves out. And this was right at the time when Elon had taken over Twitter. And everyone had a bit of schadenfreude. They wanted bad things to happen to Twitter and Elon to feel good about themselves. And it was the perfect opportunity to like sort of play into this joke that someone had a role as director of badge access and that Elon and his whole crew got locked out. And so, yeah, it's now framed. It's going to go up on the wall very shortly. It just came in the mail like a few days ago. So that's my most viral tweet.
That must be one of the most liked tweets ever on Twitter. Yeah.
It's definitely up there. I mean, I think that there's some that are in the millions, so I'm below. I haven't yet broken 1 million likes, which is sad. I've definitely broken the few 100K. That's what actually kicked off the whole trend of I was fired from X job. Whenever there's now like a big news event, I joke like, "Oh, I was fired from this company," and make a joke that like really pokes at the underlying reason for that news story. So when Sam Altman was fired from OpenAI, I made a joke that I was in charge of all the board decks, and I put together a bad board deck, and next thing I know, Sam was fired and I was fired. And so that went really viral as well. And people, I think what's really funny is out of the 100,000 likes that got, I would say probably 10,000 people knew it was fake, and the other 90,000 thought it was real. They were like, why would OpenAI fire this guy whose job was making board decks? That's so fucked up that they blamed you, all these things. And that really is probably one of the most entertaining parts of Twitter is basically how willing people are to believe whatever is written, and they don't sort of give it any second thought.
Well, I'm glad you're having a good time on Twitter. It's definitely fun watching from over here.
Yeah. Are you familiar with Poe's Law?
No.
So Poe's Law is basically a saying, or I guess, whatever, a rule where on the internet, without clear indication of the author's intent, any sarcastic or parody expression of extreme views will be mistaken by readers for a sincere expression of those views. I don't know who Poe is, but he was very on point.
Very valid.
Yeah. Nathan Poe. I'm on his wiki page. Nathan Poe. I don't know who he is, but he now owns Poe's Law, which one day I'm going to get it rebranded to Coe's Law, and then I'll know I've won.
You're gonna get that, and you're gonna get 1 million likes on a tweet. I think you're gonna hit both goals at some point.
Yeah. When those two things happen, I'm gonna quit the internet.
That's a good endpoint for you. So kind of moving away from your Twitter shitposting career. I know you sold your first company to Even. What was it like going from having no boss to having a manager all of a sudden?
I think in my particular case, it was a very bad time. I had mostly been working on my own startups for several years leading up to that acquisition. And that was my first real job. And I think I just didn't jive with the culture of that company in particular for a whole bunch of reasons. But I do think, looking back as we went through acqui-hire conversations and tried to decide what was next for us and the team and our investors, I definitely prioritized getting our investors a soft landing, as well as the team a soft landing over me taking a job that was the perfect culture fit, which in hindsight would have been way better for my mental health. But we ended up having another shot on goal, which is really what I was going for. It wasn't a home run by any means, but it was essentially another shot for all of our investors in the team with the way that the shares transferred and things like that. And so I think I never had an issue with having a boss. I just spent the last 3+ years at Carbon with an incredible boss who had recruited me, and we could talk about that story. But it was more of the culture that I had joined was not a good fit, and I don't need to get into the details. Glassdoor has the details if anyone's ever interested in looking up what people have to say about working there. But I think going to a place where the culture fit made sense for me, which is I think to some extent nicer people, more of a team oriented kind of culture where more autonomy, more just willing to giving folks the ability to go build and collaborate would have been a better. I think you see a lot of founders go to Stripe or Shopify, for example, and they're very happy. They stay there for years, and I think there's a reason for that. So prioritizing something like that would have been better than I think what I ended up doing, frankly.
So you ended up leaving, and did you take some time off, explore? What happened after?
It was the fall of 2019, so about 8 months before the world shut down, and so it was beautiful weather, and we were living in Hoboken, right outside New York City, and I used to just go for walks. After I left, I was like, okay, cool. I'm taking a month and a half off, and I would just go for walks around the neighborhood. It was 70 degrees out. It was perfect. I would joke every day at 10 a.m. at Washington Square Park. It would be me and all the stay-at-home moms doing yoga. I wasn't doing yoga with them, but they were all doing yoga in the park. And I was just this like random guy walking through the park at 10 a.m. So I took a couple months off before I started the next company, and I think I did some consulting work during that time too, just to like keep income coming in and just keeping myself busy. But yeah, I left and for the first time in, at that point, like 5 years, just wasn't working on anything full time.
So what was your day-to-day like in that in-between phase?
I'm trying to think, August 2019. I mean, again, lots of like taking the dogs to the park, walking around the neighborhood, going to the gym, going into the city, getting lunch with people, just like catching up and generally not having any stress, which was nice. And New York City is probably the best city ever in the fall to be in. And so it was a great couple months. And then I went to Germany during that time as well. Actually, my brother had just started at a company that was based in Berlin. He was going out for work and he had a hotel. I was like, cool, I'm going to bum your hotel and I'll just book a flight. So went to Berlin for 4 or 5 nights. And Berlin sucks during that time of the year, actually. It was very rainy and cold, but I think that might have been closer to November. But anyway, yeah, just like that was my day to day. There was no structure, no routine. I was like maybe getting on some Zoom calls to help a few companies out, did some traveling and generally just sort of took a nice reset.
Would you have done anything differently looking back?
Either joining the company or like during that time?
No, I mean during that time. Like I think a lot of people struggle when they sell a company, leave a company, and they're like, what do I want to do next? And it's a hard phase to be in. Like, is there anything you would have done differently or you're happy with how it played out?
I think I would have probably talked to more people during that time before jumping into the next thing so quickly and tried to learn what the biggest problems were to solve. I during that time is when I started building Command., which was my second company. And that really came out of a personal need to go build a better scheduling tool. I was scheduling a lot of meetings, actually. It was like part of the consulting work, and realized every time I needed to schedule a meeting, I was basically hopping into my calendar, going back into my Gmail, typing out all my available times and just doing this calendaring flip-flop, and wanted a way to just like insert my times. I didn't want to send a Calendly link, which is the alternative. I had like book time on my Calendly, or X.AI had died a couple years before that, and they really like pioneered the virtual EA or inbox EA. Everyone else, I just like couldn't find a solution for what I wanted to do. That's how I started building Command. And it was originally a bootstrap project of like, I'm just going to build this lightweight Chrome extension. But I hopped into that without really exploring a whole bunch of other potential problems to solve or verticals. And like my background had been fintech for 5 years. And so I probably should have gone and done something financial services related, just given where my knowledge of the world was at the time, and instead pivoted to prosumer productivity. But I don't regret that either, because prosumer is a lot of fun when you're not sort of bound by regulations and you're not bound by working with banks or dealing with any of the complexities that come with building financial software. And it really was the thing that started my Twitter journey, was having a company that I could go sort of publicly market to the world.
So the company ended up shutting down. Do you think that was because like lack of founder product fit or something else?
That was, so sort of the story of that was, we raised money in March of 2020. So a week before the world shut down. And we had a fresh $2 million in the bank, a team of 2. It was me and a co-founder. And at that point we had a good, we were starting to build this wait list, and people had started to shift a lot of their meetings to the internet versus in person. So it was a perfect timing to go build something like this, actually. And then there was a broader vision there, which was, can we go connect all of your SaaS tools? And so let's say you're in Notion, but you use Linear for ticketing, or you use Jira for something else, or you use even like Google Drive or whatever. The idea was, if you're in a tool, you should pull up Command. And in natural language, type something like find Google Doc, Ben's KPIs with his wife for Q3, and then pull in that doc into the Notion document that you're in, or maybe pull in like whatever context lived in another tool, pull that into the tool that you're in and do actions across the two. And so the idea was like, we were building this sort of connecting layer between all your SaaS tools. We had a lot of interest, like a lot of folks who wanted to use the product, a big wait list. I think we had a big co-founder falling out in November of 2020. I ended up quitting. I think ultimately, like, the reason that Command died was definitely like co-founder issues for sure. And then generally, like, I think there was a market for it. It was just not the right person doing the growth and product development on it. I mean, I had left at that point and it shut down 2 years later, but minimal traction, a lot, I don't want to say bad things. So I'm going to avoid saying bad things and sort of like disparaging and talking bad, cause I'm way past, command out at this point in my life. But yeah, I mean, it was just, it would have been a much different story, I think, had the product worked and had we continued to like double down on the marketing that I was working on. And now I'm an investor in a new calendar startup called Howie that's building what I always wanted, which is, CC your virtual AI EA. It writes back times, it goes and coordinates on your behalf, creates the meeting, things like that. And so, there will always be a need for calendaring tools. And it's just one of those things where like, I do think when folks say, they look back at their companies that have gone under and say, why have a lot of companies not succeeded and their co-founder issues? It's so true. I mean, people just don't understand what it's like. You're really, to some extent, marrying the partner who you're with early on. And sometimes that's a shotgun wedding. Sometimes that's, you've known each other for a long time and have worked together in the past. And I think de-risking the co-founder relationship is a big part of what makes these early things successful. I mean, there's a whole bunch else that goes into it, as you know, but I think it's so like my new company, my co-founder, Nick, and I have worked together now for 3.5, 4 years, like same team for the last 4 years at Carbon. And there's no getting to know each other. There's no, how do you work? How do I work? Do we like each other? Can we debate? Can we argue stuff? Can we collaborate? It is just like, let's go fucking build, and we know how to build together. So you de-risk that layer of, am I marrying the right person? And so just like marriages have very high divorce rates, so do co-founders.
Yeah, I think it's like the number one reason that early startups fall apart, just co-founder breakups.
Yeah, and it's stressful, right? Like you and maybe one or two other people are working together to go build something, and everything goes wrong. It doesn't matter how much you plan or try. Like, you won't land enough customers. Your product will start breaking. You didn't build the right product. You didn't talk to enough customers. Like, you didn't build the right, you didn't hire the right team. You had issues there. There's so many things that go wrong, and the easiest thing that people do is blame each other. And to some extent, there's worthwhile blaming. Like, you might say, you're just not the right growth person. You don't have the technical skills to go build this. And there are reasons why, there are genuine reasons why people, blame each other. But I do think a lot of it is emotional for the reason for a lot of co-founder falling outs is like, it's stressful. I need someone to go blame and like use as an outlet for this. Who is that? And they're not self-reflective. They're just like, fuck my co-founder. They didn't do their job. I'm doing my job. I'm putting in more effort. And I think it's really easy, I think, to get into that mindset when you don't know the other person that well. And so I think that's like, when you look and see two folks from Airbnb or Stripe or something like that go out and do something together, and you ask them, how long have you worked together? They go 6 years. It's just a different dynamic than, they've gone through, to some extent, their previous company has subsidized them getting like their learnings of getting to know each other.
Would you ever start a company with someone in your family?
No, fuck no. not a software company, like maybe a traditional sort of services type of company, like a bagel shop or something, but not something that doesn't have clear product market fit, I think is what differentiates that. So like, obviously with these software companies, you're doing a whole bunch of things to try and you're building something that's net new for the most part. You're not really, you're not just opening up a bagel shop and saying, let's go get customers through the door and go make bagels. And that people like bagels. And so it's very easy that business has product market fit. That's a much different scenario, because at that point it's operational. It's like hiring, $18 an hour workers. It's figuring out how to get the equipment. There's a formula for getting a bagel shop live. There's no formula for like, hey, we're going to go build this brand new piece of software that uses Gen AI to go do X, Y, and Z thing. And there's so many things that could go wrong. I would never start one of those businesses with a family member.
Yeah, I'm always amazed seeing like super successful companies, father and son or brothers. Like it happens more often than you would think.
Yeah, husband and wife. I'm like, ooh, I don't know. I know we've invested in a couple like that and they're doing great. And kudos to them. We've already got 2 kids under 3, got enough stress in the house. I don't need to add work stress to the equation.
Yeah, makes sense. So after leaving Command Dot, did you take some time, explore, like what did your next transition look like?
Yeah, that's a fun story. So when we raised for Command Dot, we raised about $2 million from a couple of VCs and then a whole bunch of angel investors. And one of those angel investors became my boss after I left Command Dot. And so when I quit, I sent out, my final investor update that said, "Hey, I'm leaving. Here's where the company's at. Here's why I'm leaving, et cetera." And I sort of sent my final update. And the next thing I know, I get a text from Io Omahola, my then angel investor, now like boss for the last 3.5 years, saying, fuck that, just come join Carbon. We're growing really fast. And we were at the time. And so I said, cool, let's learn. I was like, Io, it's been 24 hours. Let me just take a little bit more time off and then let's chat about it. And so a couple of weeks went by and he would just send me screenshots of the growth, like up and to the right, patient growth, up and to the right, revenue growth, up and to the right, all these things. And I was like, cool. All right, let's fucking chat. Like, fine. And so we did. And at the time, we were peak COVID. It was November 2020. Everyone wasn't sure if we were ever going to come out of this. Everyone was locked in their houses. Healthcare organizations were getting completely stretched thin. And I said, I could see myself working on healthcare and doing something that's impactful and meaningful. And so I was living in San Mateo at the time. I ended up meeting Aaron Bali, who's our CEO. We got coffee and walked around the San Mateo Park. And I hadn't known him before that. I knew him through Udemy and knew him because Io had mentioned him with Carbon a bunch of times, but got coffee, sat down. We spent like 2 hours together. He pitched me on the vision for Carbon. I was like, you know what? This is impactful, meaningful. I can get behind the mission. Let's do it. And then, so I left Command Dot November 2020. Yeah, joined Carbon in February 2021, spent the last 3.5 years there. Never thought I was going to leave. April 30th was my last day part-time. January, I left full-time and switched into a part-time role. And ran a few teams for the last 3 years. One was an internal tooling team. I rebuilt all of our call center infrastructure and contact center software. Actually physically spent time in dozens of our clinics, like ripping out phones and putting in different phone systems to handle our call volume. And then ended up owning all of our consumer and growth product for the last 2+ years. So anything you see now at Carbon today, booking flows, scheduling, chatting with your provider, labs, billing, notifications, our native apps was all my team for the last 2.5 years. And so I never thought I would leave. I just, as every other growth stage healthcare company, we had our set of compression and issues. And so we sort of right-sized the business a few times. And I kind of got tired of that piece. I stayed during the great times and stayed during the not so great times and finally decided it was time to go do something new. But it was awesome. And I think for a lot of founders who've had, and I guess since we're talking about like how to determine what you're doing next and what's next, for a lot of founders who have gone through co-founder breakups, I think the general resounding feedback that I have heard is that we all have a lot of self-doubt after leaving and sort of quitting the thing that you started or, however that ends up shaking out. And then joining the next thing, there's a lot of self-doubt. Like, can I do this? Can I go work for a boss? Can I go work for a larger company? It took me personally a good 6 months before I was like, oh shit, I actually do know how to do my job. And I think that it's tough when you come out of a, sort of a co-founder breakup or a company shutting down where you're like, I didn't make it work. And it's one of the hardest jobs ever is starting something new and getting it off the ground. And so I think it's easy to have a lot of self-doubt and the way that goes away is just like performing at the next role at something that's more de-risked.
It sounds like you had a really great manager. What were they like?
I was a great friend now. We had a really interesting setup at Carbon where we hired a lot of ex-founders intentionally so that we could just go and do our job and sort of treat each pod or area of the business as its own, mini company for what it's worth. And so we definitely set strategy and to some extent roadmap at the top, and that sort of trickled its way from goals down to what we were building. But then we had full autonomy over what we were building during that time. And so when it came to rebuilding the call center, when it came to rebuilding our native apps and patient apps and some hardware and stuff like that, we just built and like checked in frequently to make sure that we were all building towards the right end goal. But I think I learned a whole bunch from Io when it came to actually building building product. He had always gotten really close to the metal on everything, and you can kind of see that on his blog and his writing. He was in financial services previously as well, but just the way that he thought about product really trickled down into how I started thinking about product and questioning every assumption and every piece of the business. Especially in healthcare, you have to. It's like, why are we doing things a certain way? Well, it's because the whole industry has done it the same fucking way for like 30 years, and no one's thought about, can we do it better or can we change it? And so that was kind of a continuing theme over and over and over again in healthcare. It was like, why are we doing it this way? Why is it built this way? Why are we using this integration? Why doesn't this lab return the right results in the SLA that they promised us? Like, it all just came down to the industry is just so used to operating, a lot of non-technical people operating in their traditional ways. So yeah, that was my biggest learning, is I think that really also, I see that come out in the product that we're building today, where we're just ruthlessly prioritizing the features that matter, that make it work, and listening to customers. And at Carbon, we were unique. Our customers were our coworkers. So we were very close to our customers all the time, but same principles apply.
It's cool that Carbon was able to attract founders. I think it's pretty unique. I mean, I know Ramp and Stripe have a great culture, similarly able to attract founders, but why do you think Carbon was able to do that? Like, how were they able to bring on founders?
I think we were just all bought into the mission. I can't really think of too many other growth stage healthcare companies during that time that were really doing something meaningful. Like, you had your healthcare startups that were popping up, all sort of slinging COVID tests and doing, sort of money grabbing things, I would say. And I can't think of too many healthcare companies that are worth working for. I mean, it's a different story now at Carbon. The culture is completely different than when we were in hypergrowth mode. But, you look back at the last 3 years and it's hard to name maybe a half dozen companies who fit that bill. And we were just really good at finding founders who wanted to go deep into healthcare. And there's not many companies that took on the breadth of work that we did either. We built our own clinics, or we acquired clinics. We built our own EHR software. We built our own integrations to most of the labs and clearinghouses. We built our own native patient apps. And so you just got to do everything, which is really exciting versus, sure, could I go join Baylor Scott and White down the block here in Austin? They're in Dallas, but like, sure, am I going to be building on top of Epic MyChart? Like, yeah, and that's going to really fucking suck. And so it's just not, I mean, it's great. They're a great healthcare organization. It's just not the most fun tech to build in healthcare. And so I think hopefully that changes in the next decade. We see more and more growth, like healthcare companies break out, and I have a lot of thoughts in the space, but I think Carbon was just an exciting place to work in healthcare, which you don't hear that much of.
So just being ambitious, able to attract great people.
Yeah. And it was fun. Like, the people really made that company what it was. So I never thought I would leave. And the reason I stayed so long was just like, I really enjoyed working with the people who were there. And that's hard to replicate.
Did you consider joining any other companies when you were making that switch?
I interviewed with a bunch after I left CommandDot, and I just didn't, I don't know. There's something weird to me about going through a traditional interview process to like get a job at this point in my life. When I would interview, I forget who at the time, I think Chime was one of them. It was just a traditional, okay, cool, your next round's here and you can talk to this person. And it didn't really feel like I was joining. And maybe in hindsight, like, Chime's doing really good. Like, maybe that would have been better, but I just didn't feel like it was the right culture fit versus, hey, we've got a whole bunch of shit to build. Like, come hop on the team and meet the team. And if it's a good fit, join. Versus, like, at that point, when companies are so big that they've got like a traditional 7-step hiring process and all of that, I don't think it's a good fit for where I'm at, or what I like to do generally. I think it's probably a good filter for filtering out companies.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I think for someone looking to break into a product role, what would you tell them? I know you came from, pretty unique background as a founder, but where should they start?
Build shit and have responsibility for it and take ownership for it and actually be involved, and then craft a narrative and a story around it. I mean, I think it's really that simple. When we're hiring people who like product people generally, and it's becoming more rare. I think the product role is going away from what it historically was for good reason. But, really we want to know, how do you think? how do you like tackle problems? How do you rally the team? How do you get, how do you get stuff shipped over the line towards a shared vision or goal? How do you think about scoping? And the only way you learn how to do that is by getting hands-on with product and building it. There's no textbook that teaches you this. And it could be anything from, hey, like we were 4 college kids who wanted to like build. You'll learn a lot building with 3 other college kids, and no one really knows what they're doing, but you're shipping things. And you'll learn a lot if you join early stage and growth stage. I think the problem is when you see folks who all they've done is spent their career at big companies in product roles, they just never had enough ownership or surface area, or they have unlimited resources where they can just go say, hey, you go do this and you go do that. And, and all of a sudden they're like only owning a tiny little bit of what the end product or end result is. And so it makes it really hard when they jump into a 5, 10, 15 person company. They're like, where's my team for this? Like where's the finance guy who's going to get me the P&L? Like, where's my TPM who's going to roll this out with a partner? It's like, no, you got to go do everything yourself until we've got enough resources or we hire a role for that. But for now, I think you just lose that scrappiness and that, and people don't like that either. They don't want to be slinging the grunt work. It's just, I like it, but I think a lot of people don't.
So moving on to your latest play, I know you started a new company.
Yeah.
Can you share a little bit about that and how you got there?
I will share bits and pieces because we are not yet fully announced to anyone besides the folks who, you probably saw it come through the Angel Track forum, but obviously folks who have invested and then like customers and stuff know what we're up to. But, I spent the last 2.5 years building software that served 80,000 patients per month. So over 1 million patients a year was where we were at Carbon as a whole. We had 150-ish locations at our peak. We had virtual care. We had specialty care across endocrinology, hypertension, mental health. We had hardware at one point. I don't know why the fuck we built hardware, but we did. I worked on that. I shipped a wearable. And, I think whether it's Carbon or a traditional medical group or a health system or a hospital, there are a core set of problems around customer and patient experience that need to be solved. They're currently solved by staffing people linearly to account for patient growth and volume. And I think what we're going to see is Gen AI come and sort of take away a lot of those functions and augment the work of what a lot of these folks are doing. And that's where we're sitting right now is we want to build 100x better patient experiences than what a lot of patients experience today. No one enjoys interacting with their healthcare provider, especially all the pieces outside of getting care. And healthcare is generally a very emotional thing. It has to do with you. It's very personalized. It's your life. It's your concerns. It's your issues. And I think the better that we build this company, like the more access to care patients will get. And that's really what the mission of this is. And we're going after the pieces that I think are like very clear value capture and value creation versus, I will say, I don't believe we'll have AI nurses and doctors who are talking to patients in 10 years without oversight. I don't think that I think we'll get 90% of the way there and there will always be doctors in the middle. So we'll augment work. But but we do believe that there's a lot of stuff that can be fully automated away.
I'm excited to see. Be following along.
Yeah.
All right. Before we end off, I have 4 quick questions for you. Who's your favorite shitposter on Twitter besides yourself?
I'd have to say Chris Baki. He just like the man, and he was my other co-host on the podcast that we ran for a bit, but he's just so clever. I just don't, his writing is a level beyond what most of us can do. Definitely Chris.
He's great. Who's one person you admire?
Ryan Reynolds.
How come?
Are you going to ask why? Or do you want me to? Okay. He's, there's a whole bunch of reasons, but he's a very successful entrepreneur. He's got like no public scandals, has like great family values, also has an incredible, witty, funny brand. He's just kind of like he's sort of like the actor's version of a shit poster, I think, but he's also a founder, which I really admire. He's like turned his brand into some mega wins for the gin company that he I don't know if he started or he was just the spokesperson. Then he bought Mint Mobile. It's just very impressive what he's done. Yeah. He's definitely someone that I look up to as has done all the things.
What is your
and he's really funny.
Yeah, totally. He is very funny. What does your daily screen time look like?
Oh, I mean, it's got to be like all day. I don't know. I don't think my phone is accurate because my laptop, for example, right now is not recording my screen time. But I don't know how many hours am I awake per day. So I wake up at like 6, go to bed at 11:30. I'm probably on my phone or computer for like 12 to 14 hours during that time.
How about Twitter?
Twitter's just in bits and pieces throughout the day. So probably a couple hours, but it's all broken up. I'll like scroll it for 10 minutes in between calls, or I'll just like have it in a different tab and just sort of see what's new. So it's not like 2 hours of constant scrolling, but it's like 2 hours in 10, 15-minute blocks throughout the day.
Cool. Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to join. This has been super fun. I learned a lot.
Yeah, no, this is great. Hopefully this helps, some people figure out what they want to do next.
And help more people be shit posters.
And I hope so. We need more. Yeah, but do it on LinkedIn. We need more on LinkedIn.
LinkedIn has a lot of potential.
Twitter. Yeah.
Totally.
Cool.
All right.